In Indonesia, central Jakarta went into virtual lockdown as tens of thousands gathered to protest against recent fuel price hikes. They also demanded better health care for workers. One of the world's biggest rallies was held in the Cuban capital, Havana. This year's march was dedicated to the late Venezuelan leader, Hugo Chavez. Hundreds of thousands turned out to celebrate and show their support for the ruling Communist Party. Well, it was a different story in Turkey, where riot police were called in to disperse crowds in Istanbul. Tear gas and water cannons were used on protesters as they tried to break through barricades to reach the city's main square. 6 people were hurt in the violence. And across Europe, from Germany to Spain, Portugal to Russia, Italy to France, protesters have been making their voices heard. Al Jazeera's Rory Challens takes up the story from the Spanish capital, Madrid.
For a growing number of Spaniards, International Workers' Day now seems like a bit of a cruel joke. It's becoming increasingly difficult to actually find a worker here. Record numbers of people are jobless.
Given Spain's eye-watering unemployment rate, 27.2%, you might expect the union's message to resonate more powerfully than ever. But in fact, this is one of the most poorly attended May Day rallies in years. It seems that people are losing faith that protests like this are actually making any sort of difference.
The unions have been powerless to stop this country's precipitous economic slide. The people who did show up were putting a brave face on the low turnout.
Despite the bad weather being a public holiday and this political system and its brainwashing, it wasn't so bad. Taking into account those things, it went quite well.
Being aware of what's going on is difficult, and sometimes even though we know it, we don't want to admit it. Also, if you've got nothing, you're more scared to act.
Across indebted, recession-hit Europe, this traditional day of the left was being marked with strikes and marches. In France, with its still strong unions, in Russia, where communists dream of former glories, and in Athens, where Labour leaders railed against the austerity measures enforced by Greece's international creditors.
We are here to send a message to the government, to the Troika and to those in power in Europe, that we will continue our struggle against unfair, open-ended policies that are destroying millions of jobs on a national and European level.
Germany is considered the main instigator of Europe's austerity credo. In Berlin, protesters demanded a change in direction. Across much of the continent, jobs are disappearing, wages are falling, and living standards are on the slide. There's little for the European worker to cheer about in 2013. Rory Challens, Al Jazeera, Madrid.